Hi everyone, I am Dr. Visham Bimal from Trinidad, and it's a privilege to be hosting the program today in celebration of Indian arrival. I'd like to thank Vina for extending the opportunity to do this. And today we have two power-packed guests in the context of bringing forth the meaning of what Indian arrival is, and the uniqueness of what is the Indo-Caribbean identity. So without further ado, I'd like to present our first speaker. Him and I go back. I remember when GoPio had initiatives in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as with my organization, Caribbean Hindustani, to promote the Indian identity. He is the founder and president of the Indian Diaspora Council. He is the former president of the Global Organization for People of Indian Origin. He was born in Guyana to children of indentured laborers and spent a lot of his time working in the magistrate's court. He then left for the US, where he got his bachelor's and master's in engineering and worked for as the VP of engineering for a communication company, whereafter he set up his own company called Ramex, and it remains today one of the top 100 Indian-owned businesses in the US. He currently does a lot of work with the through the mayor's office in New York to promote a lot of Indian culture, specifically of the Caribbean. As you all know, after indentureship, the new identity of the Indo-Caribbean person or person of Indian origin came about, and then there was a second diaspora that went into places like New York, as well as Europe, Canada, etc., and all over the world. And he also was given a recognition by the just kind of trying to get the name of the university here, by the St. John's University Center, and a scholarship was given in his honor or named after him. And via the New York City Council, he was given the designation or honored as an outstanding immigrant. I now present to you Mr. Ashook Ramsaran.
Thank you, Dr. Bimal. It's good to see you again and so many friends here. Let me see if I can put something on the screen here. I went too far. Okay. Is the screen visible?
No.
I could see it.
He said, I'm sharing the screen. This, the India Center of New York, bring you to you far from home, the story of Indian indentured laborers in the Caribbean. Interesting. Only you can see it, Vision?
I think other people said in the chat that they are seeing it, yeah.
Oh,
But,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
I'm thinking you could press play slideshow to see, so it will be enlarged in the screen, unless you're comfortable using it like this.
I'm comfortable using it this way.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Okay. These are the contents of what I'll try to discuss today, as much as I can, which would be give a good understanding of the topic. Before we begin, I humbly request that we pause for a moment of silence for those who passed away due to COVID, those who are still grasping for safety here in USA, in India, in the Caribbean, as well as other countries. We pray for a permanent cure very soon for this disease for all of humanity. We also mourn the loss of life due to pervasive gun violence and other atrocities inflicted on innocent people. And we condemn atrocities against people in all parts of the world. And we urge peaceful resolutions of conflicts and disputes, in particular inter-ethnic conflicts, which results in death, deprivation, and displacement of untold masses of people. Thank you. I'm very pleased to have been selected to make this presentation. I look forward to sharing useful information, history, some statistics, perspectives, which would provide a better understanding of the subject. I also appreciate all those who are attending this lecture, many of my associates and friends, and others from several continents and time zones. Thank you for being supportive, and I do hope to meet your expectations. Thanks to Dr. Kumar for introducing me to Veena Shetty of the India Center, and so many others who are attending today, Brian, Netram, Dr. P. Shabalwal, Dr. Vishnu Vishram, and others. When Veena Shetty of the India Center of New York contacted me about this lecture, she pointed out that my background and expertise would provide useful information for this subject matter. So to give you a little background to make that all fall into place, my full name is Ashook Kumar Ramsaran. The spelling of my name was registered at the time of my birth by non-Indians who were civil servants at that time in British Guyana, and the actual spelling was based on phonetic interpretation. My father's name was Ramsaran. My grandfather's name was Ramlochan. One of the very early Indian arrivals in then British Guyana, my great-grandfather named Puraya left Calcutta aboard a ship named Adelaide and arrived in British Guyana in 1853. The journey took approximately 100 days, and there were an average of 400 passengers bound for the colonies. Normally, 10% of the passengers died on each trip. My great-grandmother, named Radha, left Calcutta aboard the ship Colgrain and arrived in then British Guyana in 1860. They were married just a few years later and raised a family. My grandfather, named Ramlochan, was born in 1867. My father was born in 1914. I was born in Guyana in 1968, and as Dr. Bimur said, left to come to the United States. I attended high school thanks to a scholarship from the sugar plantation company. I graduated 2 years earlier than children my age, worked briefly as a school teacher, then a magistrate court before getting married and leaving Guyana for USA at an early age. I would have gone to UK, but my parents could not afford the cost. So I decided to come to the United States where more opportunities were available after the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1965. Like my great-grandfather Puraya in 1853, I was one of the early arrivals from Guyana in the USA. I attended technical university and with some advanced degrees in computer electronics while raising a family and becoming settled and assimilate to a new homeland. I must credit my forefathers for their pioneering spirit, their endurance and determination to make a better livelihood for themselves and their families. And in doing so, make the new land or the country a better place, which we all seem to do. To that extent, I believe we as persons of Indian origin, PIOs, have exceeded beyond expectations. You should know that I'm not a diaspora scholar, as many others define in pure academic terms, but I've done a lot of research, traveled widely to India and other countries, and organized and participated in diaspora conferences, seminars, symposia in India, Europe, UK, USA, Central America, Caribbean, and other places. I will attempt to provide you with some insights, history, experience, and perspective based on documented history, research, and writings of so many scholars and writers who labor continuously to tell the story of our journeys. I'll refer to the works of acclaimed scholars, researchers, and writers such as Dr. Basdeo Mangru, Dr. Clemsi Charan, Dr. Mohan Gautam, Dr. Vishnu Vishram, Dr. Chandrasekhar Bhatt, Mahin Gosai, Dev Gosai, and others. To them, we owe a debt of gratitude. The Indian Diaspora Council convened the centennial commemoration of the abolition of Indian indentureship in 2017 in Trinidad, which was a next astounding success. This lecture is a discussion of about the journeys from India to the former British colonies and the lives of the Indians who took that journey and their descendants. A further discussion on the journeys of their descendants and subsequently to other countries, as we refer to as a second journey, should be another lecture session. Note that, Dr. Kumar. Definition. It is generally called Girmitia. And a Girmitia is a descendant of the Indian indentured laborers who went to Fiji during the period of indentureship by the British. So Girmitia has been used primarily by the Fijians, but now it's being broadened to encapsulate all indentured laborers and their descendants who were taken from India to several British, Dutch, and French colonies during the 1826-1920 period under the indentured labor system. The Girmitia, the word Girmit means contract, because every person had a contract. The Girmitia today total between 12 and 13 million people who are descendants of Indian indentured laborers residing in countries to which these laborers were taken, as well as those countries to which their descendants made their second journey. And I'll repeat some of the things which has become routine now and perhaps at times boring. The indentured labor trade was initiated to replace freed African slaves on sugar plantations in French and later British colonies in the 1830s, but expanded to many other locations around the world. This trend of global flow of indentured migrants developed after the end of the slave trade from Africa and continued until shortly after World War I, which is 1917 officially. It involved the migratory experience of 2 million Asians, Africans, and South Pacific Islanders who signed long-term labor contracts in return for free passage overseas, modest wages, and other benefits. In other words, it was based on a promise. The experience of these migrants of different origins and destinations is compared in terms of their motives, condition of travel, struggles, and inhuman conditions, as well as subsequent creation of permanent overseas settlements. The system in Indian indentureship takes into account the different motives of indentured labor, the recruiters and the employers, as well as the colonial powers and the profit motivation. The next slide is a map of India at the time of British in 1860. And then the one on the right is the British Empire dotted in red. And most of the known world at that time, as well as the Caribbean countries and islands, and a map on the far right, bottom right, by a dear friend, Dr. Jagat Motwani, who drew the arrows and the dates of the migration from India. The Indian indenture system was an ongoing system of indentureship, a form of debt, bondage, DEBT, debt, by which 3.5 million Indians were transported to various colonies. And it spread to the Indian Ocean, South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, Madagascar, Zambia, Zanzibar, Uganda, Malawi, Seychelles, Reunion, and Mauritius, to the Pacific, Fiji, and to the Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Suriname, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Belize, Guadeloupe, Martinique, Grenada, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, and Jamaica. It's also British Honduras, now known as Belize. I said that, I'm sorry. As well as the growth of the Indo-Caribbean, Indo-Fijian, Indo-Mauritian, and Indo-African population. That's an excerpt from Wikipedia. Indian indentureship was a harrowing period for laborers from several Indian states to the faraway lands of then these different colonies to replenish slave labor. The majority of those laborers were taken from Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, and Pondicherry. If you look at this slide here, you'll see something that I've worked hard to tabulate. The country to which the laborers were taken, the first ships that they traveled on, and the number of arrivals from 1826 to 1917. It's a very good comprehensive listing, which is used by many people now. And the next slide shows the indentureship to the Caribbean and the years. And you will see that in Guyana, then British Guyana was the first one, 1838. And as the demand grew, the last ships arrived in Nevis in 1874. Nevis is a small island. I don't know if there are any Indians of Indian origin there now. But that was Nevis, I believe, no, St. Croix was Danish. Can you believe? Even the Danes got involved in indentureship. The places of recruitment on the far right-hand side, you will see the districts there. Northwest Province, Central India, Bihar, Bengal, Bombay, Orissa, Punjab, Telugu, and the various districts. And so researchers have cataloged this and have made some of the ships used. And you can see paintings of these ships. There were no photographs available at the time. The history and consequences of indentureship are deeply embedded with meaningful reflections to millions of descendants living in many countries which are recipients of Indian laborers seeking better livelihoods. And the names of the countries are also of significance is the continuing migratory second journeys or duality of the Gurmitya from their respective countries of birth to Europe, North America, Australia, New Zealand, South Asia, and other Southeast Asia countries. This trend has certainly added to the dynamics of the Gurmitya's journeys to be added to the continuing dialogue among Gurmityas and others impacted by this 20th century migratory trend. The next slide is the contract of an indentured laborer. And the legislation was passed in 1883. And the agreement in plain English, the period of service, the date of arrival in the colony, and all the stipulations. The British were very good in documenting everything, even when it was bad. So give them some credit for that. Immigration passes were something of a standard. There was a man's pass, a woman's pass, a boy's pass. And each person leaving India on one of those ships was given a pass which was filled out detailing the name, closest relative, the district from which, and even the caste system, the caste of that person, and who they accompanied. So it was remarkable. This is the record that came with the ship. Each ship had one of this for each passenger. And we were also told that there's a copy of this that was left in Calcutta. But after the bombing during World War II, they were relocated and no one knows where they are now. And another copy was in the taken to UK as a manifest of the ship. And we don't know where that is, but we're looking for that. Bishram and myself are pursuing that. Maybe it's in the Greenwich Library across the River Thames, but we'll find out where it is. Because some of the records in the various former colonies are missing or negligent or are not in good condition. And so we're trying to see where we can locate things, because many people want to know more. As I said, the system started in 1826. The official abolition was 1917. And the last ships to fulfill contracts in return was in 1920. This slide shows pictures taken from Trinidad, and one of their Indian arrival they display. Very well documented. The Indian indenture system was finally banned in 1917. According to The Economist, when the Indian Legislative Council finally ended indenture, it did so because of pressure from Indian nationals and declining profitability, rather than from humanitarian concern. Isn't that amazing? Let's see the next slide. We have some paintings that were of different colonies. Actually, the one in the top far right is a picture that I had taken when Indian Arrival Day was celebrated there. Here's some photographs, and this is only a few. There are thousands and thousands of photos, and I credit to the people who obtained them and posted them so that we can use them now. Wherever we go, it's our duty to leave footprints so that people will know we have been there. And here are some of the examples of footprints we have left. Far left is the Calcutta Memorial, which I was very fortunate to be able to work with the government of India to design and install on the banks of the Hooghly River at the Demerara Depot. And then you have the one below that is my bop in Suriname. Below that is Trinidad. And below that is a reverse photo of taken in upside down in Martinique. There's also Suriname. There's Guyana in the middle, Trinidad, 2 on the bottom. And far right, top right is the gut of Mauritius. We need to do more of this to record these journeys. Following the emancipation of slavery in 1834, many liberated Africans left their former masters. This created an economic chaos for the British owners of sugar plantations in the Caribbean and elsewhere. The hard work and the hot, humid farms required a regular, docile, and low-wage labor force. The British looked for cheap labor. The British crafted a new legal system of forced labor in which many ways resemble enslavement. Instead of calling them slaves, they were called indentured laborers. Today, capitalism call other people different things too, contract labor, globalization, whatever you want to. You change a name, and the situation remains fairly the same because the profit is motivation. The motivation is profit. Indians primarily began to replace Africans previously brought as slaves under this indentured labor scheme to serve in the plantations. The first ships, as I said, arrived in the Caribbean in 1838 on May 5th aboard the Whitby, the first 2 ships, Hesperus. These ships sailed from Calcutta, and passengers were treated inhumanely aboard the ship as well as when they arrived. They were confined to their estates and paid a pitiful salary. Any breach of contract brought automatic criminal penalties. Many of these were brought away from their homelands deceptively. Many from inland regions, over 1,000 kilometers from seaports, were promised jobs, were not told the work they were being hired to do, or that they would leave their homeland and communities. They were hustled aboard the waiting ships, unprepared for the long, arduous 4-month journey. Charles Anderson, a special magistrate investigating these sugar plantations, wrote to the British colonial secretary, declaring with few exceptions, the indentured laborers are treated with great and unjust severity. Plantation owners enforced work in sugar farms so that harshly that the decaying remains of immigrants were frequently discovered in sugarcane fields. When laborers protested and refused to work, they were not paid or fed, they simply starved. The sugarcane plantation-driven migration led to ethnically significant presence of Indians in the Caribbean. In some islands and some countries, these Indo-Caribbean migrants now constitute a significant portion of the population. Sugarcane plantation citizens of Indian origin continue to thrive in countries such as Guyana, Jamaica, Trinidad, Martinique, French Guyana, Guadeloupe, Grenada, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, St. Croix, Suriname, and Nevis. By some estimates, over 2.5 million people in the Caribbean are of Indian origin. Many have ethnically blended with migrants from other parts of the world, creating a new syncretic culture. Not just British colonies, sugarcane production affected human history in colonies controlled by other pre-World War II powers. So you have sugar as a motivation to derive profit, and profit as a motivation to enslave people. By the way, this is a personal comment I have to make, so outside the script of what I've prepared. When the Africans were brought as slaves, they lost their names, religion, whatever beliefs they had, clothing, lifestyle, food, and dignity. And they were forced to adopt names given to them by the plantation owners, just like the slaves in North America. And sometimes you have to have pity on that situation when you don't know where you came from, but you've been given everything brand new by someone else. The Indians are sort of blessed to be able to retain so much. Foods, names, culture, religion, tradition, history, and even their documents of arrival. The African slaves were not so fortunate. So I do pity them for that. I pity the situation. Let's talk about the prospects of today and tomorrow. There's much more we can talk about in the detail. But just one other thing there. Indian heritage and culture are the cornerstone of our diaspora. It transcends time and place, and it survives obstacles and severe situations, remoteness, and influences. Despite speaking different languages, living in different countries, and sometimes remote places, sustaining and improving our lives, we share heartfelt feelings of Indianness, and urge and yearning to connect and belong. That's why we're talking here today. Meanwhile, we have inherited and taken a lot from India and transformed our lives and the new countries of our birth and adoption. The Indian diaspora is a continuing phenomenon and can be likened to the export of people seeking better lives for themselves and their families, which we achieve and subsequently we flourish after assimilation and adaptation with each succeeding generation, while adding to the economic progress of our respective countries of domicile. Not amazing characteristic that we improve our lives and we improve the place where we live. Indian heritage, culture, and values are the driving elements of sustenance for survival, achievement, pride, and progress at all levels. Our diaspora is molded by culture, heritage, and values, while it also adds to and sometimes influences those traits in both colonies. Sorry about that. Let me repeat that. Our diaspora is molded by culture, heritage, and values, while it also adds to and sometimes influences those traits in both subtle and visible ways. For example, language, clothing, lifestyle, technology, and social values. The older diaspora, of which we are part, which I refer to as a legacy diaspora, the Caribbean, Africa, Mauritius, have retained more of the Indian culture and heritage intact and in its original form for the many reasons associated with remoteness, harsh living conditions, sense of belonging and togetherness, sustenance and bonding. While some adaptation was necessary, such as with foods and clothing, some conversion to Christianity and breakdown of the caste system. Later, some Indian music and songs witnessed a fusion combination known as Caribbean chutney. It seems that wherever we Indians go, we take certain staples that sustain us. And I refer to them as the M's: the mantra, the music, and the masala. With memories of mentoring and mataji and the value of money, and of course, thrift and hard work. Simultaneously, we have a knack for reconciling our two identities, our inherent Indianness and birth or newly adopted citizenship. We learn very easily to adapt, to coexist and progress in other countries with multi-ethnic societies far away from India or the Caribbean. Indian heritage is such a powerful asset in the diaspora that some colonial powers marginalize persons of Indian origin, curbing cultural observances by making it difficult. Despite such efforts, those Indians persevered and sought more to preserve and protect Indian culture by culture, heritage, and values, and survived and remained vibrant. I also want to stress that adherence to heritage and cultural origin should not and must not diminish national loyalty. In fact, assimilation and adaptation are key attributes to progressive lives in other birth or newly adopted countries. Our heritage includes blessings as well as yokes of burden. These are topics for an extensive discussion. With innovation, modern communications, advanced transportation, and increased levels of mobility, as well as increased opportunities, there is remigration or second journeys. Especially among older diaspora, there is a yearning to find one's roots, and I credit Dr. Kumar with his lecture series and sessions to bring about more awareness of that. Trips by people of Indian origin from the Caribbean, South Africa, and Mauritius to find family and roots. The tracing of our roots was first discussed at a session I organized at the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas 2005 in Mumbai because of the need. The Calcutta Memorial, a diaspora initiative that I work closely with the government of India to dedicate, is a beacon of acknowledgement of those who left India as indentured laborers from 1834 to 1920. One must acknowledge and be grateful for the indisputable and invaluable role of civic, cultural, religious, and advocacy organization in the preservation of Indian culture and values. These have helped promote assimilation with ease, generally peaceful coexistence among multi-ethnic societies, while advancing diaspora advocacy, addressing the concerns and interests of the global Indian community. Indian heritage has undoubtedly influenced our lives and in time have also influenced the lives of others. The visible examples include Gandhi as a model of tolerance and perseverance for those seeking peace, civil rights, and equality in USA, South Africa, and other countries. The celebration and general acceptance of Holi and Diwali by non-Indians. Certain characteristics of courage, resilience, determination, thrift and hard work, competitiveness, faith, reverence, and respect. These are the hallmarks of Indianness derived from culture, heritage, and value that are maintained, nurtured, and remain with us beyond the shores of India and the Caribbean. Footprints. Our ancestors arrived barefoot from India to the Caribbean, just like Africans who were made slaves. It is ironic that we should talk about footprints because they physically left their footprints on the landscape as they are. They have made a lasting impact on the lives of people and the countries where they live, socially, culturally, economically, and politically. We came for the opportunity seeking better lives. We came seeking better lives and we achieved beyond expectation. The first journey, 1838 to 1917, was charted by us, for us by others, with little or no choice of destination. The second journey is for opportunity by choice and circumstance. On this second journey, we are designing the roadmap and leaving footprints along the way. In fact, Vina reminded me I should say something about 2 years ago, we renamed a street in Queens, New York, called the Ramesh Way, for someone who's an icon in the community of providing community service, long-lasting tribute to him. I was fortunate to be in charge of that project, and it came about with a lot of pride and kind of a sad remembrance, but a lot of pride. Then there was Officer Narayan, who was killed while on the line of duty, and his street was renamed for him in Richmond Hill. And on Saturday, the 29th of May, which is Saturday, this coming, at 10:30 in Richmond Hill, New York, the corner of Liberty Avenue and Lefferts Boulevard will be conamed Little Guyana Way. A moment of pride, a moment of intense satisfaction for the people who live in Queens, in New York, that the map will be changed to reflect their presence. And thirdly, a month later, on June 29th, we have Pandit Ramlal Way, which I was also fortunate to spearhead, being unveiled in the corner of Liberty Avenue and 133rd Street in honor of the legacy that Pandit Ramlal left with us. Documenting our journeys. We must recognize those whose efforts contributed to the tracing the footsteps, follow the footprints, and documenting the journeys. These include many historians, researchers, writers, singers, and poets. Among the known ones are Peter Rahaman, Dwarkanath, Vasdev Mangu, T.S. Naipaul, Balakrishna Naipaul, Danpal Narayan, Beturam Ramarat, Tyron Ramnarayan, Clem Sicharan, Lakshmi Prasad, John Regis Ramsamy, Pat Diyal, Gayatri Bahadur, Chandel Prasad, Khalil Ali, and so many, many others now and to follow. I know I'm leaving out many, but too many to list. It's important that we encourage more to do research and document this amazing phenomenon. Efforts are being made to include the Caribbean migration history in the schools where our people reside in USA and Canada, and for this and the next generation to become more aware while education of others about our history to create more understanding among people of different backgrounds and ethnicity. We should also remember and recognize those who were pioneers in the struggle for rights and freedoms from colonial domination. There are many who are living as well as those who have passed on. The Indian Diaspora Council has proposed the Government of India a Diaspora Museum and Conference Center to be located either in Calcutta or virtually. And we request that that proceed as a center to migration as well as our documenting our history. To house the records, books, artifacts from 22 countries to which Indians went as part of the indentureship era. For a region with slightly 1.2 1 million people of Indian origin, we have made tremendous strides, remarkable achievements while overcoming many hardships and obstacles. We have produced prime ministers, presidents, cabinet ministers, the best cricketers, Nobel laureate, legal minds, professions, entrepreneurs, scholars, and scientists. These are stalwarts on whose shoulders we stand tall, who made it possible for us to be courageous and to be recognized. They and we owe it to all those who made those first footprints. President Chedi Jagan, Bharajagdev Ramotar Ifran Ali, Prime Minister Basdev Pandey, Kamala Prasad Bisesar, President Santoki, Laureate Sir V.S. Naipaul, Commonwealth Secretary Sridhar Ramphal, cricketers Rohan Kanal, Solomon, Ramaddin, Alvin Kalicharan, Signarayan, and several others. Historians Dwarkanath, Clemcy Charan, Basdev Mangri, Vishnu Vishram, Arnold Thomas, Winston Tolan, Brindley Samaru, Marina Budos, Lakshmi Prasad, Janet Naidu, Krishna Naipaul, Kali Rao, Ali, and so many more. Singers Sita Pandey, Terry Kajraj, Ramdev Chaitu, Sundar Popo, Rakesh Shankaran, and so many more. Academics, Professor Clem Sankat, Tota Mangar, Kumar Mahabir, Sherian Singh, and so many others. Yeshu Prasad, entrepreneurs, Yeshu Prasad, Deo Gosai, Boise Seal, Helen Bangwanjin, Imran Maksud, Brian Ramphal, Ken Singh, and so many others. I will skip over few things so we can get to prospect for tomorrow. The prospects of tomorrow remains bright and promising in academic, science and technology, a general youth core, economic strengths of our region, Caribbean region, socioeconomic, social justice, opportunities in many sectors are available, peaceful coexistence, and connections with India. These are just a few of the opportunities because of the changing dynamics of our closeness to North America, English as a general language, and our motivation to succeed in what we do. So the prospects of tomorrow, today and tomorrow, remain very promising. During and after indentureship, we achieved remarkable successes in economic, cultural, social, educational, professional, and political, of course, sports too, as well. So there are so many avenues, so many sectors, so many opportunities, and we've taken advantage of them. There's writing and publications and all aspects of manufacturing. The challenges that we face. As everyone knows, there's always interethnic strife. We did not cause it. I don't believe anyone is particularly personally to blame for this, but we were put there. As a friend of mine in Guyana said, we came by ships, but we are in the same boat together. And so let's see how we can solve the problem of coexistence, which has always been a thorn. Marginalization of one race over another. Education and lack of education of our history and language. Political representation or misrepresentation or repression. And the population demographics, which is shifting based on migration. Some groups migrate to other countries and leave a vacuum. For example, do you know that in Holland, there are approximately the same number of people of Indian origin as in Suriname? That means that the population in Suriname of Indians will always be that small. And that means it affects political representation as well. So these are challenges and obstacles, but they are man-made and can be overcome. As I said before, we have major accomplishments in in the economy, in political arena, education, professional business entrepreneurs, and business entrepreneurs in the Caribbean as well as in other parts of the world. Sports, music, and entertainment, chutney is becoming mainstream in some of the movies, foods, and writers. The second journeys, I briefly touched on that because of the nature of the kind of people we are, as well as the opportunities that are afforded and the lack of opportunities in our native born countries. Many have moved to UK, USA, Canada, Netherlands, France, Australia. And now this is something that it seems that destiny has a way of devising ways to come full circle. Indian indentureship to the Caribbean region was based on economic motivation, cheap labor for the British plantation owners. Renewing the engagement with India can provide tremendous economic advantage for both India and the Caribbean region with its huge untapped marketplace for Indian pharmaceuticals, science and technology, academic, health, textile, and dairy products for the entire Caribbean, Latin America, and South America. Full circle is Indian economic motivation to take advantage of these opportunities in many sectors. It may be advantageous for India to set up an economic hub in the Caribbean region to advance its agenda, beneficial to both India and the region. And of course, India can be involved in many of the things such as hemispherical conflict resolution. In conclusion, I trust that my presentation was informative and adds to this dialogue as I emphasize our history and progress. My presentation is just a brushstroke on a huge canvas of our journeys, of our history, our challenges, and opportunities. More details and more information can be obtained from the many scholars and writers who are real experts on this topic. So I thank you for your patience, your understanding, and support. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks, Mr. Ramsaran. I need to just the host just to give me ability to share my screen. Because 1 second, I can't share my screen, so I guess you're just seeing a picture of me. Okay, good. Right. Yes, and I just want, that was a very impactful presentation. Why? Because I remember the search for my ancestors. The name Bimal and Timal are quite unique names in Trinidad, and once you have that name, you're related to me in some way. We had known that my great uncle or granduncle had the immigration papers, and only recently I had gone to the National Archive, and me and my uncle looked through two huge and very thick books. I think Shams, yeah, so genealogists Trinidad based who look for the ancestry and how many generations you fall forward. I remember looking for specifically the 29th of January 1880 on the SS Jura, and at the end of it, we saw the name for the first time of my great-great-grandmother, had two sons, Bimal and Timal, and we didn't even know that she had a daughter, Sukiya, who also came. That story is recorded on Caribbean Hindustani, its Facebook page, a Facebook page I had set up. Mr. Ramsaran mentioned Girmit, and he said it's contract. Actually, Girmit, which is contract, yes, comes from the words agreement, so that the pronunciation of agreement by indented laborers in their way of pronouncing agreement was Girmit, and that happened in Fiji, and that's how we adopt the name. I want to say hi to our viewers in Suriname and the Netherlands. Mr. Ramsaran mentioned about Suriname and the Netherlands. After sharing this on Caribbean Hindustani, I saw a lot of my colleagues from the Netherlands and Suriname liking it as well as tuning in. And I want to just look at the fact that, and Mr. Ramsaran brought it up in his presentation, is that it's a unique identity. We're not necessarily of a person who's a national from India, but we are Indo-Caribbean identity. And that's quite unique, so much so when we mention the language, because Caribbean Hindustani, the organization I belong to, do a lot of research on songs and translations from the diaspora. Mr. Ramsaran mentioned chutney music. And chutney music, if you would look, it's not necessarily Hindi. Most of the time it's Bhojpuri. So that the language of the Indo-Caribbean peoples has its critical mass in Bhojpuri, whereas modern standard Hindi has it has it in Kariboli, which is the dialect in Delhi. So that's something that people find themselves trying to grapple with to understand our identity as Indo-Caribbean people.
आजा आजी की कहानी नाना नानी की कहानी आजा आजी की कहानी नाना नानी की कहानी सुनो सुनो ट्विन वेगो निवासी आजा आजी की कहानी सुनो सुनो ट्विन वेगो निवासी आजा आजी की कहानी आजा आजी की कहानी नाना नानी की कहानी आजा आजी की कहानी नाना नानी की कहानी सुनो सुनो ट्विन वेगो निवासी आजा आजी की कहानी सुनो सुनो ट्विन वेगो निवासी आजा आजी की कहानी of May in 1845, on the 30th of May in 1845, Father Razak arrived here in Trinidad, Hindu, Muslim, or Christians together, still living here like brothers. Hindu, Muslims, or Christians together, still living here like brothers. Suno suno twin, Bego Nivasi, Aja Aji ki kahani. Suno suno twin, Bego Nivasi, Nana Nani ki kahani. देश भाषा धर्म संगीत नृत्य खाना देश भाषा धर्म संगीत नृत्य खाना फेस्टिवल और परंपरा बच्चों को सिखाना सुनो सुनो ट्रेन बेगो निवासी आजा आजी की कहानी सुनो सुनो ट्रेन बेगो निवासी नाना नानी की कहानी पसीना परिभर पाई बहना खून आंसू पसीना परिभर पाई बहना will come to build this nation and educate their children सुनो सुनो चिन बेगो निवासी आजा आजी की कहानी सुनो सुनो चिन बेगो निवासी नाना नानी की कहानी भाई बहन हमारी तेरा काम है भारी, भाई बहन हमारी तेरा काम भारी, तेरा काम है भारी। Uphold your identity, Indo-Trinivasi. सुनो सुनो ट्रिनिडो निवासी आजा आज की कहानी, सुनो सुनो ट्रिनिडो निवासी नाना नानी की कहानी, आजा आज की कहानी नाना नानी की कहानी, आजा आज की कहानी नाना नानी की कहानी। सुनो सुनो ट्रिनिडो निवासी आजा आज की कहानी, सुनो सुनो ट्रिनिडो निवासी आजा आज की कहानी, सुनो सुनो ट्रिनिडो निवासी आजा आज की कहानी।